Welcome to Between the Pages, Kids, Books, and Values. Today we're going to talk about the value of honesty, and we're going to finish up this last section. This is the third part. We're going to finish up with this section with a couple books for you to read to your children. One everybody knows is Horton Hatches the Egg. It's a Dr. Seuss classic, and it's talks about Horton. He's an elephant, and he's walking along in the forest, and he meets this bird, Maisie. And Maisie wants him to sit on his egg because she's so tired and just needs a little break. And Horton says, okay, I'll give you a little break. I'll sit on your egg, and I'll be very careful. And Maisie goes to Florida. She goes on vacation, and she does not want to come back. And she stays, and she stays, and Horton sits there for months and months and months on the egg, and he doesn't leave because he's going to be responsible. He's going to stay there 100%, and he's going to be there, and he won't go back on his word. Now, Horton had a lot of hassles. He went through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, people laughing at him, out there in the cold, but he stayed true to his word. And if you're honest and you stay true to your word, there's nothing that can stop you. And it's a good little book to talk to your children about, and it's a classic. Another one is a fable that I've heard several different times, but one is called The Amazing Pig by Paul Galden. And I love this story. I just love this story. The story is about a king who loves to hear stories. And he wants to hear stories, and all of his gestures and everybody in his court has told him all the stories they know, and he has no more stories. So he says, okay, if somebody can tell me a story that I can't believe really happened, then they can marry my daughter, the princess. And so nobleman after prince, after wealthy men, poor men, they all go to see the king, and they all tell him these fabulous stories. And he's like, oh, I can believe that could happen. Oh, I can believe that could happen. And his court's in on it, and they say, oh, yes, we can see that happening. We can see that happening. And so man after man walks away disappointed. And there's this poor young man, and he's seeing it, and he's seeing all the people walking away, and he's like, and he's thinking, and he thinks to himself, and then he gets in, and he tells this elaborate story about this pig, this amazing pig that took care of him when he was a baby, that let his dad cut pieces off of him so he could have fresh bacon every day, and who laid eggs, and this was just a fabulous story. And then he said, oh, and by the way, you know, this pig stopped being so amazing, and he stopped being such a wonderful pig, and we had to get him a swine herder, and that's your grandpa. He's taking care of our pig now. And he's like, oh, my grandfather is not taking care of your pig. I don't believe you. So guess who got to marry the princess? So it was good because it talks about lying, because he wanted to hear stories so bad that he lied about marrying his daughter off, because he didn't want to marry his daughter off. He wanted to hear stories. But then somebody had to put him into the story, put the king into it, put his family and what belonged to him into that story. And then he couldn't believe it. He had to say he couldn't believe it that his grandpa was doing that. And it's a great little story that you can talk. Now, my favorite book about honesty is called A Day of Work by Eve Button. I just love this book. This is like one of my ultimate favorite books. And when you have okay. Now, Eve Button, she's my favorite author now. I just love all of her stuff for children's books. And this book is talking about this grandpa has just come to America, and is going out with his son, his grandson, to look for a job. And he's with the grandson because he doesn't know any English. And he's like, okay. And the grandson meets this guy, Ben, and he runs up to him, and he has a Lakers hat, and Ben has a Lakers hat, and he's like, oh, look, we're Lakers fans. You know, my grandpa, he's a great gardener. He knows everything about gardening. Is this the same here? Same as in America? Let's go, you know, you can hire us. And Ben's like, okay. And so when they're in the car, because his grandfather's like, I'm a carpenter. I have no idea what to do with gardening, you know. But they're like, okay. And he's talking to the grandson, and Ben can't understand any of this. And they get there, and he says, okay, pull the weeds, leave the plants. And he gets in the car because he assumes his grandfather knows what weeds are. Well, they pull the plants and leave the weeds. And when Ben comes back, he is furious because he thought this guy knew. He thought this guy was a gardener. And he is furious because all of his plants are gone. And the little boy, Francisco, is trying to say, you know, to say, didn't we do a good job? Didn't we do a good job? And Ben's furious. And then his grandfather is like, did you lie to this kid? Did you lie to him? And he's like, okay, will the plants be okay overnight? And he's like, yes. And he goes, and we'll come back in. Come back early tomorrow, we'll plant the plants and pull the weeds. And Francisco's like, double the work? Are you serious? Grandpa, church. There's church on Sunday, Grandpa. We have to go to church. And there's a Lakers game. We have to watch the Lakers game. And Grandpa's like, no. We have to do what we right. We have to right what we did wrong. And the Ben was really impressed by the grandpa. Really, you know, there was a lot of character, a lot of things you can teach your children about the character and the power of your word. And so because Francisco lied to the man, they ended up doing double the work. But because Francisco's grandfather was a man of integrity and a man that said, okay, we'll do the work and you don't pay us until we do it right. And he went back and he did it, and he worked another whole day replanting and pulling the weeds. And his father, Ben, was like, you can teach gardening to anybody, but the character, what your grandpa has inside, I can't teach. I'm going to hire him for more than one day. And so this man, for his grandpa, got more than one day's work, you know, for paid, more than one day's work paid, because he was a person who was integrity, who kept his word and did the job, even though he did it wrong the first time. He made sure he did it right and worked for it. And it is a great little story. And then there's an activity I'd like to tell you about. If you take it, I have some toothpaste and some a paper plate and some kind of utensils for the kids to put, you know, they pour out the toothpaste on the paper plate, and then I let them play with it, and they like to play with it, and then they have to put the toothpaste back. So you can give them one, you know, like one of the butter knives, or a toothpick, or a chopstick, or whatever thing you can think of, something that's flat that you can, you know, put the toothpaste back into the tube, and then, you know, obviously they can't. But it's fun to play. And then you say, you know, your words, what you say to other people can't be taken back. And you have to be truthful. Because if you tell lies, you can't take those lies back. And you can't take them back. And it spreads all over. It spreads on your hands, on your clothes, on your brother's clothes, your sister's clothes, and it gets everywhere. The toothpaste it's fun to play with, but it gets everywhere. And lies get everywhere. The truth gets everywhere. The power of our words. And it's a great little activity to do with your children. So spend time either doing the activity or reading one of those 3 books, get them from your library, and enjoy your kids.